All right, welcome to the El Cajon City Council meeting. We continue holding remote meetings while the governor's executive order continues to be in effect due to the COVID-19 pandemic. I'd like to remind our citizens they can submit questions for items on today's agenda, as we have done in previous meetings. I encourage that public comments be submitted this time. They will be read at the appropriate time during this meeting. Comments will be accepted up to the conclusion of the vote for the item. Comments may be submitted through the City of El Cajon's website. That's cityofelcajon.us. Under Agendas and Minutes, go to Video Streaming, and you will see a button to submit your comments. The meeting is called to order. I'd like to ask our city clerk to please call the roll.
Thank you, sir. Council members, if you could please state that you are present when I call on your name. Mayor Wells.
I'm here.
Mayor Pro Tem Kendrick.
Here.
Council Member Goebel.
Here.
Council Member Metchnell.
Here.
And Council Member Ortiz.
I'm here.
Thank you.
Would you please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a brief moment of silence? Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you very much. The city clerk posted orders of adjournment of the January 26th, 2021 meeting and the agenda of the February 9th, 2021 meeting in accordance with state law, council, and housing authority policy. We have two presentations on today's agenda. The first one is a recap of the pension obligation bonds. Managing Director at Urban Futures, Julio Morales, will tell us about this. Julio, are you here? Hi.
I am here. Hello. My apologies. I am going to share my screen if that's okay.
Fine. It's all yours.
Great. Let's hope this works. Can everyone see that? Great. So, as you recall, I had been before the council a couple of times, and we talked about the CalPERS unfunded pension liability, which was $205 million, a total of $387 million of the payments. As you see in the orange, the real challenge to the budget going forward, one of the things the executive staff had identified was really the challenge being able to meet those increased payments from our baseline. So from this fiscal year to 2031, they would have increased $21 million on a cumulative basis. And until they reach that same level, another $32 million. That was really the challenge. It's a challenge that every entity is facing. As you know, we went to council a couple of times, and due to the steps taken, one of the first things we had to do after the validation process was to get a bond rating. And frankly, the city had not had a underlying bond rating in quite a while. They were able to achieve a AA rating, which was the second highest category. AAA is the highest. But I think I wanted to share, I think it's important to highlight some of the things that the rating agency saw in the management practices of the staff and, of course, the city council. So they noted the strong reserves and conservative financial management practices. We hope that you continue that. That certainly was a plus. The level of reserves are very strong. Clearly, the adoption of the pension funding policy, which is part of this process, the council workshops, and the overall approach to pension liability management were highlighted. Certainly saw those as credit positives. Once again, going to the strong management assessment, this is really critical because at the end of the day, the rating agencies will assess your economic and demographic variables, which is very difficult for you to actually change. Certainly on the long term you may, but on a short term basis it's difficult. But the management practices, both what the council does and the executive team, the city manager's office and the finance director, they can implement strong management practices, which they highlight here. Good financial policies and practices, the available general fund balance, the ability to respond quickly to changing conditions, and they noted that the city was unusually attentive to economic development priorities. I think these are certain things. If you read it, I know that the management has a copy of that. Be more than happy to forward it as well. But it's always a guideline in the future to see the things that they saw positive and some of the challenges you might face in the future. I liken it to a credit score for a number of people. Hey, you have a 750 type of credit score. So it was very strong, and this was critical to you being able to sell the bonds at a very low rate. And just like the loan on a home mortgage, the higher your credit score, the lower the borrowing rate. Now, we worked with the financing team, which was city management and finance director, in thinking about how to address the pension obligation bond risk, which is namely market timing risk. And we thought about this and had a series of meetings and decided to bifurcate the sale of pension obligation bonds to kind of hedge against that timing risk. So, and I think these were very long, detailed decisions as to whether we wait after the election or before the election. I think the management team rightly selected to wait after to see what volatility was in the market. And then we made another deliberate decision to issue at the beginning of the year to take advantage of the influx of cash that came in. At the end of the day, we did one bond financing and anticipate doing another one next fiscal year when the next crediting rate for CalPERS will come in. The true borrowing cost was 2.84%, one of the lowest pension obligation bonds done to date. You saved $104 million of deferred UAL savings. In other words, those scheduled UAL payments that you were going to have with CalPERS, you saved at that point. You shortened the maturity base. And specifically in this case, we targeted the longest bases to lock in savings. When we come back the second time, we're going to target the remaining amount of UAL, which will look at the shorter bases. And we did that to try to hedge against interest rates and also lock in savings today. So the anticipation is another pension obligation bond in the future. My apologies. This is what your savings looked like. So your average annual payments on the pension obligation bonds about $9 million. The savings is about 50% of the interest, and I said once again, a 284 TIC. So you borrowed $147 million. You refinanced 2/3 of the liability. You see there's this amount left in pink. So what we hope to do next fiscal year is come back and refinance that remaining part, and you'll see level out those payments. And that will result in pretty significant savings and help you have that budgetary flexibility in the future. Now, this is the interest rate spreads that you receive. What's a little bit different on a treasury bond, a pension obligation bond, is they're priced off the spread to treasury. These were very attractive borrowing rates. So you can see at the very back end are 3.28. Some of the rates were pretty low. So overall, you're refinancing your 7% CalPERS liability at less than half that rate. Remember, the average rate here of all these bonds was 2.84. So always the question is how you compare to all these other issues. And I can say pretty darn favorable when you consider that the only two other issues that had a lower TIC, all-in TIC, were two AAA transactions. And in fact, you look at all these, the pretty good company, you had all these other AAA deals. So you were really borrowing at very attractive rates. I think Bank of America did a fantastic job in executing the transaction, and you generated a considerable amount of savings. So overall, we do see a downward trend. This isn't time ranked, but we have been seeing things come back. I do think that the staff really thought intently about when to sell the bonds, and it came to our advantage. It certainly was a very advantageous sale in that market, and it's kind of the new benchmark for AA rated pension bonds right in this market. One last thing regarding the sale of the POBs, it was sold to a variety of typical investors. bank trusts, bond funds, asset managers, insurance companies, and arbitrage accounts. I believe Bank of America provided a sales summary. That's something that they request. We don't provide that because of proprietary information, but can be made available if you'd like to see the name of the actual investors. Typically, so these bond funds, asset managers are the types of, like the PIMCOs and BlackRocks that you see and hear of on CNBC or Bloomberg News. That's pretty much all that I have. I'll open up to any questions. I will say the last thing, and I don't know, Graham, if you have the opportunity to share it, but this transaction was highlighted on Bloomberg, which is a feather in your cap. I actually shared it with my father and had to spend 5 minutes explaining what Bloomberg was. He's a doctor. He has no clue what it means. But I think it's great to have the city quoted in there. And I think there'll be a lot of other surrounding cities looking to the success that you had and probably asking questions in the near future. Any questions?
No, that was actually a very comprehensive report. Thank you very much. Council, any questions for Julio? Okay, I think you've gone over it very well. Thanks for all your hard work, and please thank everybody on the team. I know that a lot of hours went into this.
So, Mr. Mayor, before we move on the presentation, I did want to share just one item about the transaction. When the council gave staff authorization to move forward, as you recall, the threshold we predicted, or we anticipated savings in the $90 million range, and that was the threshold that the council felt comfortable moving forward. As Julio pointed out, we achieved the savings of $104 million. So we outperformed what we had hoped to bring to the table. And so just kudos to staff and great job to Julio and the Urban Futures team, as well as the Bank of America team. They did outstanding work here.
That's excellent. Wow. Council members, anything? Okay. Again, thank you. And please thank the entire team. Okay, then. Hold on. The second presentation on today's agenda is Love Your Neighbor Week. I'd like to invite Parks and Recreation Manager Shannon Bullock and Recreation Services Supervisor Heather Carter to tell us all about this. Ladies.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm Shannon Bullock, one of the Parks Recreation Managers, and I'm here with Heather Carter, the Recreation Services Supervisor, and we are going to tell you about Love Your Neighbor. I just need to share my screen. So El Cajon's Love Your Neighbor Week started yesterday, February 8th, and it will go until Sunday, February 14th.
All right, so part of our Love Your Neighbor Week is we're doing a social media campaign to promote local businesses and restaurants. We also, throughout the week, will be providing family-friendly activity ideas, including some fun Valentine crafts and a really good sugar cookie recipe. The El Cajon Teen Coalition also put together some free craft kits. Those can be picked up at the Net Center all week from 2 to 6 p.m. They also made a TikTok with a visual of their craft directions. You can also find that on Instagram. We are also selling very low cost Valentine grams, which consist of a flower, a cookie, and some other Valentine goodies, and our rec squad will be delivering those on Friday. Our Valentine grams are just a way for El Cajon residents to show that they appreciate someone in a special way. They can send them to any El Cajon resident or business, and in them we also have this heart that you see on the screen that they can decorate and cut out and give to a neighbor to spread the kindness onto their neighbor. So overall, throughout the whole week, we'll be encouraging El Cajon residents to show love to their neighbors and community by either volunteering, picking up litter, just going to their local businesses and restaurants, and even just beautifying their own neighborhood. And so we're promoting Love Your Neighbor Week through emails to all of our Parks and Rec participants, Instagram, Facebook, and then we're also promoting it through our Parks and Rec classes that started this week. All right, thank you for your time. You can check out more information at cityofalcohol.us/loveyourneighbor.
Thanks very much. I appreciate it. Council, any questions or comments? Well, Shannon and Heather, thank you very much for the nice report, and please thank the whole team for all the hard work that went into this. Graham, anything from you?
No, sir.
Okay. All right, then we're on to agenda changes. Staff, do you have any agenda changes?
Mr. Mayor, no changes to the agenda.
How about council members? Okay. We are now at consent items. Consent items are routine matters and act by one motion according to the recommendation listed below. With the concurrence of the city council, a council member or person in attendance may request discussion of a consent item at this time. Council members, do you wish to pull any of the consent items? Staff? Angela, do you have any comments?
We received no comments, sir.
I'll make a motion then to approve the consent items.
Second.
Mayor Wells, your vote, please.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Kendrick,
Yes.
Councilmember Goebel. Councilmember Goebel, I think you might be muted.
Yes, I was, and yes is my vote.
Thank you. Councilmember Mitchell
Yes.
and Councilmember Ortiz.
Yes.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
We're now at public comment. At this time, any person may address a matter within the jurisdiction of the City Council, Housing Authority, successor agency to the El Cajon Redevelopment Agency that is not on the agenda. Comments relating to items on today's agenda are to be taken at the time the item is heard. State law prohibits discussion or action on items not on the agenda. However, City Council and Housing Authority members may briefly respond to statements or questions, and an item may be placed on a future agenda. Angela, do we receive any comment cards on this?
Yes, sir, we did. We have 24 comments. A lot of these were made on a template or a variety of a template, so I will group those together and read the names of the people who submitted it. But the first one is it's actually an anonymous comment, and it says, "Any progress on the homeless issue, question mark. It's very sad and scary to walk or drive on the city of El Cajon streets and see this huge number of homeless people." End of comment. Next one is from Cheryl Castillo. "I would like to know if the city has any plans on cleaning up El Cajon every time I go outside. There's dog feces on the sidewalks, garbage everywhere, mattresses. It's really a mess. Also, I would like to find out why the city hasn't taken down signs of businesses that are no longer there. I've seen them up for 5 years. It'll say donut shop. I'll walk over and there's no donut shop. It'll say smoke shop with a big sign. You walk over there and it's a closed business. I'd like to see some incentives to get some good businesses here in El Cajon, like a 99-cent store that we can go to would really help the community. I see a lot of people shopping with their EBT cards at 7-Eleven on their EBT day. So I think there's a great need for a 99-cent store. Thank you." The following two comments, one is from Nancy and the other one's from Anonymous. It's the same comment, so I'll read it once. "I urge the city of El Cajon to redistrict. There are many communities of interest in El Cajon. These communities are not stagnant and many times are highly mobile. The residents in this community should be a part of the redistricting process to determine new boundaries that will maintain cultural, familial, and neighborhood ties. Moreover, California Election Code 21621 requires that cities ensure that communities of interest are captured to the extent practicable in a new district map. We know communities of interest do not remain stagnant. The next group, actually the next one is just a comment from Kiana Asamanfar. California Common Cause has worked to improve representation of the state and local level by creating an inclusive, accessible, and community-led redistricting process. In the spirit of democracy and ensuring that every El Cajon resident is well represented in city government, we urge El Cajon to begin planning and executing the 2021 redistricting process as soon as possible. According to California Elections Code 21621, all cities with district-based elections must redistrict following the census. And in quotes, following a city's decision to elect its council using district-based elections, or following each federal decennial census for a city whose council is already elected using district-based elections, the council shall, by ordinance or resolution, adopt boundaries for all of the council districts of the city so that the council districts shall be substantially equal in population as required by the United States Constitution. End of quotes. As hundreds of jurisdictions in California prepare to redistrict and as the COVID-19 pandemic poses a challenge to community outreach and education, it is imperative that the city of El Cajon acts quickly and begin planning its redistricting process by making budgetary allocations, identifying city staff to lead the process, seeking services from redistricting experts and consultants, and reaching out to community organizations, inviting them to help inform the city's plans. The city should plan to carry out a transparent, community-driven redistricting process that prioritizes the needs and voices of El Cajon residents. This will help ensure that for the next decade, El Cajon residents have fair representation in city government, that communities are able to elect candidate of their choice, and that government is responsive to residents' needs and interests. We look forward to working with the City of El Cajon to carry out an inclusive, transparent, and accessible redistricting process. The next comment from Doris Bitar. El Cajon is one of the largest cities in San Diego County, and it is cut in half regardless of natural boundaries. And if El Cajon can be made whole in the redistricting, it would have more leverage for all kinds of alliances and resources. Next three comments are the same comment. They came from Wedad Schlata, and she is actually in the county of San Diego, from Sarah A. and Lori Teal. And their comment reads, please protect the democratic process and engage in a redistricting process in 2021. By ensuring a fair and equitable redistricting process upon receipt of 2020 census data, you will be protecting the rights of residents to equal representation, utilizing the most recent and up-to-date data. In 2017, the city used 2010 census data to draw its first ever council districts law. Law requires El Cajon to comply with the Federal Voting Rights Act. El Cajon used 2014 American Community Survey Citizenship Voting Age Population data to draw district boundaries in 2017. Since that time, the Census Bureau has released updated data. The city must engage in an open redistricting process to ensure VRA compliance. Finally, a new state law requires that citizens ensure the communities of interest capture to the extent practicable in a new district map. California Election Code 21621, like the total population, we know communities of interest do not remain stagnant. The only way the city can conduct an assessment of communities of interest is through a public redistricting process. And this is, again, from Lori Thiel, League of Women Voters of San Diego. The next comment is from, actually the next 14 people submitted the same comment, and their names are Yasmin Obid, Nawaya Obid, Rawan Obid, Bassem Obid, Selma Hassan, Nadine Hassoun, Yama Awad, Jasmine Erica, Laila Brighton, Subreen, Lukman Bukrawi, Sumaya R., Sarah, and Ali Abu Qadir. And their comment reads, sorry, bear with me, that most of them are members of the Arab Resource Center of El Cajon, Al Majdal, and a couple are from actually the county of San Diego. And it says, we are reaching out to demand the following. 1, El Cajon must begin the process of redistricting immediately using the 2020 census results. 2, redistricting must be transparent and open to our diverse El Cajon communities. 3, redistricting commission must become independent from the council and open to the public. We look forward to see you implement the needs of our communities and taking our concerns seriously. Thank you for your work and have a wonderful day. And then the last 2 comments came from the same person, so I combined them. And that is from Vanessa Green. And she writes, Dear Mayor Wells, the United States is at all levels a representative democracy. Our community's diverse in political thought, backgrounds, jobs, and living experiences select someone who can serve as an advocate on their behalf, who can fight for them, address their concerns, and work towards solving their problems. In a representative democracy, it is vital that we ensure our communities are represented fairly and equitably, and that every community that has a voice in governance. One of the ways this can be addressed is through redistricting, reshaping city council districts to take into account economic and population growth, shifting demographics, and outwards expansion. Redistricting gives our communities a chance to have a better say in who represents them, and in turn creates a space for fair and equitable representation. That's why I'm calling on the City Council to adopt, formalize, and begin a redistricting process. It is vital that with the release of the new census data, the City of El Cajon does its civic, legal, and moral duty to reshape council boundaries in accordance with changes in our city and give our diverse neighborhoods a full seat at the table to discuss how they are represented now and how they can be better represented in the future. I sincerely hope that this City Council adheres to the will of law and of its people, and I look forward to news about the rollout of the redistricting process. And again, that is from Vanessa Green. And those are all the comments, sir.
Graham, did you want to talk at all about the redistricting process, or you want to do that?
I can do that really quickly. So first of all, the U.S. Census just certified the outcome, or the data, or released the data. So we're literally seeing data just in the last few days that we haven't had a chance to see before. That's number one. 2, state law requires us to reconsider districts, so we're going to be following the law in this manner. Part of that is hiring a company to do the analysis. We'd probably recommend using some similar consultants that we used before. This currently is not in our budget, so as we present the budget in a few months, we'll be including a budget line for some consulting services, not only to do the data analysis, but also to do the public outreaches as required as well. So those are things that are coming down the pike, but we don't have a lot of details just because we just recently got the data, and we're not under, we're still well within the timeline to complete the law.
Thanks, Graham. Appreciate that. All right. There are no written communications on today's agenda. There are no public hearings on today's agenda. We have 2 administrative reports on today's agenda. Item 7 is the Connecting Communities to Outdoor Play NRPA grant. And staff, will you please tell us about this?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I have a brief video to just show you to kind of highlight the grant a little bit, but also highlight some of the recent ongoings at Wells Park the last 6 or 7 years and how we've been making some improvements there and how we were attracted, or how the NRPA, or National Recreation Park Association, were attracted to us because of those efforts. So bear with me.
The City of El Cajon has been awarded the Connecting Communities to Outdoor Play grant for the National Recreation Park Association and the Target Corporation. It's a $26,000 grant for free after-school hours programming from February 16 to May 31st, 2021, utilizing our rec squad at the park. Recent highlights of Wells Park renovations and activities include the 2014 Indian Gaming Local Benefit Committee grant that awarded us the adult fitness area. Beyond that, in 2014, we added the Kaboom Playground Grant with over 250 volunteers in one day, assembling and putting in the ground. 2016, we were awarded the Housing-Related Parks Grant, which expanded our dog agility course. The Movies in the Parks series started in 2017 and continues on to this day several times a year. Community Dump Day started in 2018 and services hundreds of community members We offered Snow Day in 2019 to our community members. In 2019, we received the Kaboom Refresh Grant for Wells Park's Playground. On September 20th, 2020, we featured the 92020 Day at Wells Park. In 2021, we received the U.S. Soccer Foundation grant for mini-pitch soccer court at Wells Park. The City of El Cajon would like to thank the National Recreation Park Association and the Target Corporation for providing us the Connecting Community to Play grant this year.
Okay, so we wanted to kind of highlight some of what has been progressing at Wells Park since 2014, some of the successes. The video didn't show some of the less fun recreational activities that have been being improved. So our public works team have put in parking lot lighting, security gates. We have added a public safety substation at Wells Park where we have rec staff and police department, community service officers based out of. Our public works department also improved and added a sewer lateral line, and we increased a lot of Wells Park fencing in and around the area within that. So we do have some stormwater treatment improvements going in very soon as part of our Prop 1 grant that we are partnering with the San Diego River Conservancy with. But Public Works Department will be probably presenting on that at a later date. I just wanted to try to offer just a little encapsulation of all the successes that have been happening at Wells Park over the last several years, just so you were a little bit aware of that. The NRPA awarded this grant to 4 cities across the nation. They were attracted to Wells Park, a lot of the improvements that we are doing there, but also because they saw our El Cajon Plan 2030, as you see around my lanyard, trying to brand it any way I can. But beyond that, they sought us out because they see Wells Park is a heavily population dense area. So any improvements that we are making, they want to be a part of that. So this grant, should you accept it and authorize it, it would allow us to offer free after-school programming. We would use a consultant to gather data on successes in terms of strength and fitness of the youth that are coming to it for free. We would be able to get some swag to actually get youth to come and participate in it, like little promo items as well. So in general, this is just a $26,000 grant, but our rec squad we expect will be doing some really cool things with it, and you'll see a lot of social media play with it. That concludes my presentation.
Well, thanks, Frank. Any questions for Frank or comments? Okay. Angela, do we have any speaker cards on this item?
No, sir. No cards.
All right, council, it's up to you. Sounds like a no-brainer. Something we'd want to do. Somebody like to make a motion?
Move adoption. Second.
Okay.
Mayor Welter, vote please.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Kendrick,
Yes.
Council Member Goebel,
Yes.
Council Member Mitchell,
Yes.
Council Member Ortiz.
Yes.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
Thank you, Angela. Our last item is a COVID-19 status report, and I would like to ask staff to tell us about this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Before I give the presentation and share my screen, I just wanted to point out the mural behind me. So as you recall, we had a day on September 20th, 2020, earlier this year, our 9/20/20 day. And we had members of the community help paint the mural behind us. It was one of those paint by number murals. I think 3 of you participated in that. So kudos, your artwork looks amazing. And I
You're
stole
welcome.
it for the day. It's not going to stay in here permanently. It's too big to fit into my office, unfortunately. But we're figuring out a permanent home for it. But this is a great example of community coming together and producing something beautiful. So with that, let's talk about something less beautiful. We'll talk about COVID-19. So I'll be really quick. There's not a lot to report, but I wanted to go over some data, and then talk about some community outbreak data that we analyzed this week, and then of course touch on vaccines. As you can see, we are experiencing a massive drop in the number of cases countywide. We're actually kind of back to where we were after the beginning of a peak, or just shortly after Thanksgiving. We had this, as you can see my arrow, we had this spike right here in the end of November, early December, and then it continued to grow. But we're back to those levels right now, so that's a great thing. And if you look at all of our data, it's suggesting this downward motion. So this is all, by the way, we've been collecting data for almost a year now. So this is a year's worth of data, which is hard to see. But if you break it down just in the last 30 days, you can see it a little more precisely. As you can see, there has been this precipitous decline in the number of active COVID cases in the county. The city of El Cajon has a very similar trend going on as countywide, although our drop is even a little bit more dramatic, although our increase was a little bit more dramatic as well, in part because of the number of skilled nursing facilities we have. But we're actually hovering around the area that we went into towards the middle of November. So we're at those middle November numbers. One of the things that, a metric that we look at countywide is the amount of capacity we have in our hospitals and our ICUs. I'll share the ICU data in a second. But as you can see in this slide, this shows the number of hospital beds currently occupied. The blue are those that are non-COVID, or total beds in use, and then the yellow are the total COVID patients. As you can see, again, since the beginning of the year, there's been a pretty significant drop in the number of COVID-related patients that are in our hospitals, and as such, we're having a little bit more room and capacity. We're a little bit over 20% capacity that we have in our hospitals, or remaining capacity. Our ICUs are about the same. Our COVID-related ICU counts continue to go down. We had a high earlier in the couple weeks ago, actually, of 417, but that's gone down to 326 ICU patients. So I wanted to share some that I thought was interesting information about how we compare to the rest of the county in terms of outbreaks, total outbreak cases, a percentage of those cases as a percentage of the entire caseload that we experience, deaths from outbreaks, as well as the percentage of deaths. And I want to look first at skilled nursing facilities, and I'll just share some larger data on just general outbreaks. But in the region, and by the way, we normalize this data by dividing everything by, or everything's per 100,000, so it creates an apple-to-apple comparison. But if you look at the region, there are 4.5 skilled nursing facility outbreaks per 100,000 individuals. In terms of cases, that's 110 cases per 100,000 people. That's a high percentage of cases. Countywide, that makes up less than 2% of the total caseload, and makes up 16% of the total number of deaths are coming from skilled nursing facilities. That's the entire county, not including El Cajon's figures. So let me share El Cajon's numbers. We have more outbreaks per capita. We have a much higher caseload per capita, almost 5 times as many. The percentage of our cases coming out of skilled nursing facilities is significantly more than the county. And the number of deaths, and specifically the percentage of deaths from our jurisdiction, are mostly from skilled nursing facilities. Where in the county, less than 20% are. In El Cajon, over 50% of the deaths attributed to the city are out of SNFs. That's pretty significant. So let's look at how it compares to just community setting outbreaks. So these are outbreaks that are occurring at restaurants and places of business. And if you look at the way that the media portrays the city of El Cajon is we're footloose and fancy free. No, we don't do any enforcement, which is not true. We don't care about the lives of our residents. That's completely untrue. And in fact, as I drive around the county, I'm actually shocked at not shocked, I'm proud at our business community and how well they've protected our residents by being closed, where I go to a lot of communities, despite the rhetoric from elected officials, are fully open with very little protections in place. So community-wide, there are 35.7 outbreaks per 100,000 individuals. There's 253 cases per 100,000 individuals, and there is less than one death per individual. And just, this makes up about 1% of the total deaths countywide. And these are community setting outbreaks. So let's look at El Cajon's numbers. Remember, our SNF numbers are significantly higher than the regions. In our case, our community setting outbreak numbers are significantly less than our region. We are about a third of the number of outbreaks. We're significantly lower on the number of cases, and we've had actually 0 deaths attributed from community setting outbreaks in our city. I think that's an important thing to note. Any questions about this data before I kind of move on to tiers and vaccines from the council? Okay, we'll have time for questions and answers afterwards as well. As you know, not much has changed since last week. The one big change is based on the Supreme Court ruling that occurred late Friday. Places of worship can operate indoors at 25% capacity. Places of worship were previously under the outdoor category, but those have been able to move up with a lot of continued safety measures in place, such as wearing masks and no singing. Same with things that are closed. The one thing that we did hear during the governor's press conference is that competitive sports, there's going to be some news about that in the next couple days where there'll be some more clarity of that, but we're getting the impression that sports will be opening up shortly as well. In terms of distribution, over 400,000 first doses have been administered. That equals 14% of the county's population. It's pretty impressive. Second dose, we're still at about 75,000, which makes up less than 3% of the total population. But as the governor pointed out today during his press conference, our county actually leads the number of vaccines administered on a per capita basis. So we are a leader in this area. We currently are in the phase 1 and phase 1A and phase 1B of the vaccine. We were, from what I understand, administering vaccines to 65 and older. Because of the limited number of vaccines, that's been pushed back up to 75 and older. If you actually look at the tiering system, it actually is 75 and older, but the county released or started going down into the 1B, a little bit lower to the 1B section, and started pulling up 65 and older. But from what I hear, that's stopped right now. Supervisor Anderson just brought forward a proposal this afternoon. It is literally decided on just minutes before our city council meeting began to move police officers or those in the law enforcement industry up into the current existing tier that's receiving vaccines. One of the rationales that we understand that the county gave for the reason why medical professionals and firefighters, paramedics were given the vaccine is because of their exposure to the virus and performing life-saving procedures on people that may have COVID. We know in our own community and countywide that our police officers are many times the first ones on scene, rendering first aid, providing CPR. So Supervisor Anderson's proposal was to move those law enforcement officers up into that tier. That proposal did not move forward. It lost on a 2-3 vote, with Supervisor Desmond and Supervisor Anderson voting yes and the other 3 voting no. So in terms of receiving a vaccine, if you are currently in the appropriate tier, or your tier will be opening up soon, you can go to your medical provider. They'll do some screening. There are county sites or sites throughout the county. One of them is currently here in the city of El Cajon, just north of City Hall on Magnolia. There's also a superstation, several superstations throughout the county. The closest one to us is at Grossmont Center in La Mesa. We also understand that the state will be distributing about 100,000 vaccines directly to pharmacies. And so that will be another outlet to receive them, but the details haven't been fully vetted on that. So as we hear more information, we'll share that with the council. So with that, council, we're here to answer any questions that you may have about the presentation and where we're at from a COVID perspective.
Thanks, Graham. That was really good. Very interesting about the number of deaths. That's kind of surprising. Council, any questions? Steve.
Graham, let's go back to the slide that had, maybe 2 or 3 slides ago, where it said Phase 1B, Tier 1, age 75 plus. That slide. Yeah, I think that's 65 years plus. Am I correct?
Well, from what we understand is that initially it was 75, and the county allowed 65 and older to start receiving it, but because of the shortage, that may have shifted. I actually have a call into the county to confirm that, but we've heard that those that are 65, that are not 75 or older, that have called for appointments are not being accepted right now, but we'll get some more information about that.
Great, thank you. Let's go back a couple of slides to the community outbreak slide. Yeah, now you would think that the council has taken a position of judgment when it comes to enforcement. We have not taken a hard stance. We've taken a very business supportive stance. I think the hypothesis would be the looser that you are about enforcement, the higher the number of outbreaks. But it seems like that hypothesis is not supported by this data, that the looser the enforcement did not result in higher outbreaks in El Cajon. Am I reading that correctly?
I think that's a reasonable assessment, but I think one of the things that I should point out is I don't think El Cajon's enforcement is much different than the enforcement that's occurring in other communities. We're just open about it, where other communities I don't think are as open about their enforcement. So I don't think we are enforcing less or more than most other jurisdictions, based on my conversations with my colleagues.
Really, the only way that it could be lower than the region, the way that it is if our enforcement was much stronger, and that's just not the case.
That's exactly right.
It's very interesting data.
Mr. Goebel, I think the previous slide that talked about the skilled nursing facilities, I think that data, and we talked about this at the last meeting, and you and I have talked about it too, really tells it all. And if you look at National City in El Cajon, we are the 2 jurisdictions with the highest number of rates per 100,000, and we happen to have the highest concentration of skilled nursing facilities. So this is all related to congregate care, and to a certain degree demographics too. But I think the level of enforcement probably has very little to do with the numbers that we've experienced in El Cajon. But although you wouldn't know that if you read some publications.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Graham, I noticed you mentioned skilled nursing facilities, but you didn't mention independent living facilities or board and care facilities. How do they play into this?
They do play it. We receive 3 sets of data. We receive data, skilled nursing outbreak data. We receive skilled nursing facility data. We receive congregate care. So whether it be an independent living facility or Southwest Keys facility, those types of places. And then we receive just general outbreaks. The number of community non-SNF congregate care numbers are pretty low and pretty insignificant. So I did not include those, but I can include them next time.
No, not if it's not relevant, that's fine. I was just curious about it.
It'll be interesting to see because it does. I'll show you some data that kind of shows how irrelevant it is, but I think that's important for the council to see. So I will include that next time.
Good to know. All right, any more questions for Graham? All right, Angela, do we have any speaker cards for this item?
No, sir, we do not.
Okay, well, this was just for administrative only, no action is required. And so we will move on to commissioner reports, of which there are none on today's agenda. Item 9 is my activities report, which is as reported. And we're at the activities reports of council members. Mayor Pro Tem Gary Kendrick.
As reported.
Council Member Michelle Mitchell.
I do have some items to add.
Please.
I missed the deadline. First of all, I completed the League of California Cities Academy for New Mayors and Council. It was very informative, and I appreciate the opportunity to interact with other new members of various city councils around the state. I also attended a San Diego County COVID update call and got some more information on COVID, and they're pretty intense in this as far as their information. And then I had to add last council meeting. So that's it.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you.
All right, Council Member Steve Goebel.
My list of activities will be included in next council meetings list.
And then Phil Ortiz.
Mine are as reported.
Okay, item 14 is a joint report by Mayor Pro Tem Kendrick and Councilmember Mitchell. Who's going to tell us about this?
I'll start it out. I grew up in Santee, and where it's very hot, just like here in El Cajon in the summer. And one of a big deal for us was to be just as kids would just to jump through the sprinklers in the front yard to cool off. And a lot of kids that live in the apartments here on the valley floor don't have any front yard, so they couldn't jump through sprinklers if they wanted to. And I think it's important to give kids something to do. And we had talked several years ago about some sort of water feature at Wells Park. And Wells Park is ideally situated for that because it's a big park. It's right in the center of the city. And I think there's a good chance we could get some grant money or community development block grant money to help us put in a water feature, like what they call splash pad. It's similar to something like what they have at the County Administration Center, where you just have water coming up off of this giant rubberized pad, and the kids can run through it. And there are a lot of cities that have that type of feature. So what I'd like to do is ask the staff to give us some possibilities, maybe a feasibility study on that. I know we're not exactly rolling in the money right now, but sometime in the future, we may have the money to put something like that together and have an awful lot of happy kids in our community. And I'll turn this over to Michelle. She wants to add anything. It's in her district.
Thank you, Gary. So yes, I remember raising my daughter in El Cajon. It'd be really hot, and we didn't have air conditioning. There was no pool, couldn't afford to go to a pool, so we sat in front of a fan eating popsicles. And so what I'd like to see is a splash pad for moms and dads to take their little ones to the water feature, their toddlers, and let them splash around. You don't want to have to go to a pool all the time. It'll be open to everyone. Seniors can sit around and get some of that cool mist off the water features, maybe put their feet in the water. I just think it would be a great addition to the park. We've done so many improvements on Wells Park, and I think this would just be a really nice addition. And so if we could work on maybe getting some grant funds to go towards this, I think it'd be a wonderful thing. Thank you.
You know, we have a history, this city council, of giving gifts to the children of El Cajon. America on Main Street, and with the free rides and Haunt Fest. So I think this would fall into that tradition that we have.
I agree with you completely. Anybody else want to make a comment?
Oh, real quick. I don't know if you guys have been to Hilton Head Park. It's in the unincorporated area. They have a splash pad there, and actually I take my son to that splash pad, and I think they only charge $1 for a wristband so they can keep up the cost, but my son loves it. My wife takes my son there all the time in the summer, so maybe something along those lines to research.
Sounds great. Well, one nice thing is Wells Park has been so significantly improved. I went by there just the other day, and it's so much cleaner now. It's really a good place for kids to play. Now is the right time, I think, to do something like this. Unless it's not going to get hot in El Cajon anymore, which I'm guessing it might be. So,
I've got a question.
Oh, yeah.
The CDBG funds likely would pay for the construction. Do CDBG funds also cover ongoing operational costs?
So good question. And just as a reminder, there was a splash pad initially in the master improvement plan that the council had approved several years ago. It fell out in part because of the cost. It wasn't necessarily the cost of the construction of the splash pad. It's the cost of the ongoing maintenance of the splash pad. So if the council does move forward, we'll bring back some information on construction costs and on the other. But to answer Mr. Goebel's question specifically, yes, CDBG money can be used for the construction, and it can be used for some operational costs, but it becomes tricky because now it becomes a matter of we would have to income verify the individuals that utilize it, number one, and two, it comes from a pot of money that you struggle as a council with having more requests to use that money than you actually have available money. So you would have to take money away from ECTLC, for example, in order to fund that operation. So this would most likely be general fund operated expenditure.
I guess if we get to, as part of your analysis, if for some reason you feel that, well, I guess I'd like to expand the scope of the analysis to include other options for what I'll call water coolness than just the splash pad. That it's if the goal is to provide relief during some of the hottest months of the year, let's expand this to look at the splash pad plus any other options, including either facilities or assets, in case one or more isn't a good choice financially. So being more expansive would be a good analysis.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Steve has a good idea. We want to get things that have the biggest bang for the buck, and especially looking into the future with maintenance and oversight, the cost of oversight by our Parks and Rec people. Maybe we get the people from Rotary or Lions Club to chip in a little bit on this as their gift to the children of El Cajon.
Great idea. So, Graham, do you need anything else from us? You don't need a vote on this.
No, yeah. So this is direction to staff to come back with an analysis. So we can do that if that sounds like the pleasure of the council.
I think everybody wants that. Great. Thank you, gentlemen. Ladies, thank you, Michelle. Great idea. Okay. Oh, Angela, did we receive any comments on that item?
We did not, sir.
Okay. All right, moving on. There are no general information items on today's agenda. Item 15 is the introduction of an ordinance to prohibit demonstrations that target residences. I'll ask staff to introduce this item.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the City Council. You'll recall that I think at the last meeting it was the mayor had brought up this issue of possibly exploring the concept of a municipal ordinance to prohibit targeted protests in front of anybody's house. We reviewed prior to that, we reviewed the constitutionality of it, and I'm convinced that it can happen that way as long as it's limited to the targeting of a particular residence. It's not something that you could allow people to say, well, you can't walk through the block of houses, and it just so happens that it's somebody else's house is there. That doesn't apply. So in doing so, we prepared the attached ordinance. It does limit the enforcement to those protests or that are targeting a particular residence, no matter whose residence it is. It gives us a tool to prevent the disruption of activities and possible violence in the future. You've all seen some of the video that's happened across the nation with targeting individuals' homes. And also the after effects when you aren't targeting somebody's home, you're targeting a neighborhood, it becomes different. So at this point, I'll finish my report, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those questions. If the council agrees and approves, I'd request that you somebody move, and we have a second to introduce the ordinance for first reading and have the city clerk read the title of the ordinance. Thank you.
All right. Any questions from council? Angela, do we have any speaker cards on this item?
No cards, sir.
I'd like to make a motion then that we move the motion forward and have the first reading.
Second.
Mayor Wells, your vote, please.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Kendrick.
Yes.
Councilmember Goebel.
Yes.
Councilmember Mitchell.
Yes.
And Councilmember Ortiz.
Yes.
Motion carries by unanimous vote. And the title of the ordinance reads, an ordinance adding chapter 9.41 to title 9 of the El Cajon Municipal Code to prohibit demonstrations that target residences.
Thank you, Angela. We have two items to approve today. Item 16 is the second reading and adoption of an ordinance to allow signs on city-owned properties under certain criteria. And I'll ask the city clerk to read this title. But first, Angela, are there any speaker cards for the item?
No cards, sir.
All right, then would you please read?
Thank you. An ordinance to amend section 17.19.040 of and to add section 17.190.265 to chapter 17.190 of title 17 of the El Cajon Municipal Code to allow signs on city-owned property under certain criteria.
All right. May we please have a motion?
Move adoption.
Second.
Mayor Wells, your vote, please.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Kendrick.
Yes.
Councilmember Goebel.
Yes.
Councilmember Mitchell.
Yes.
And Councilmember Ortiz.
Yes.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
The last second reading, item 17, is the second reading and adoption relating to electronic and paperless filing of the Fair Political Practices Commission campaign disclosure statements. I'll ask the city clerk to read the title. But first, Angela, are there any speaker cards for this item?
No cards, sir.
Then please read the title.
An ordinance amending Chapter 2.75 of Title II of the El Cajon Municipal Code relating to electronic and paperless filing of Fair Political Practices Commission campaign disclosure statements.
May we please have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Mayor Wells, your vote, please.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Kendrick,
Yes.
Councilmember Goebel,
Yes.
Councilmember Mitchell,
Yes.
and Councilmember Ortiz.
Yes.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
All right. There are no closed session items on today's agenda. And this brings us to the adjournment, the regular joint meeting of the El Cajon City Council, El Cajon Housing Authority, successor agency to the El Cajon Redevelopment Agency, held this 9th day of February 2021, is adjourned until Tuesday, February 23rd, 2021 at 3 o'clock p.m. Thank you very much.